Please be seated. Stepping into the bright light of day, after so long in the darkness of the tomb, I imagine the light was blinding, painful even. It's one thing to learn how to see in the dark, how to tolerate the discomfort of learning patience, practicing that inner gaze that allows you to gradually discover what really lurks in the dark places of our psyches. It's something else entirely to step boldly or be hauled, stumbling and bound into the light of an uncannily familiar yet ultimately strange new world. But the spiritual life, spiritual growth, which is really the same thing because there's no life without growth and no growth without life, the spiritual life requires both darkness and light, both patience and courage. We must develop patience and the capacity to sit and learn to see in the dark. And we must cultivate the composure to stand in the light. And this is not work that we do entirely or even mostly on our own. When we sit in the dark and open ourselves up to exploring the murky depths of our souls, we don't do that alone because God is with us. We heard that in our psalm this morning. Out of the depths we call, and then we wait. And we learn to develop the patience enough to see the light, to hear that voice of our ever-present and always faithful companion, Jesus. And then when we do emerge, when we return to the world, we are also not alone. Jesus issues two commands today. The first to the one in the tomb, come out. And the second to those gathered around, unbind him. We all need to come out of our tombs. And when we do, we will still need to be unbound. See, the inner work, the work that you do in the dark or with your spiritual director or your therapist or your soul friend, that work is vital and important, and it's not enough. Because we live in a world encrusted with layer upon layer upon layer of cultural expectations, societal expectations, familial expectations. In other words, we all encounter, in the words of one poet, stones that seal us off from life, and cloth that binds our transformation. And so we need others to help unbind us when we stumble, squinting from the dark. I'll give you a couple of concrete examples. So part of my Lenten practice this year has been reading and reflecting on a series of meditations from Dr. Catherine Meeks, who is the executive director of the Absalom Jones Center for Racial Healing. The meditations are from her book called The Night is Long, but Light Comes in the Morning. And she says very clearly at the beginning of this book, if you don't do your inner work with sincerity and intention, you will never do anything in the outer world that is worth speaking about. And so for the past 5 weeks, I've been getting up in the dark, making some coffee, lighting a candle, and sitting down with this book and a journal. And I've spent several weeks now reflecting on questions relating to fear and rage and loneliness, trying to name those fears that arise in me over and over again, tracing the sources of irritation that still too often spill over into rage. Are they attached to anything? What stories are associated with those feelings? Can I imagine life without those stories or with different stories? What things might I need to leave behind? What in me might have to die in order for something else to live or be reborn? Trust me, I'm going to have plenty to talk to my spiritual director about the next time that we meet. Let's call all of this individual soul-searching stuff, let's call that tomb work. The other thing that I've done is taken the intercultural development inventory as part of the Race, Church, and Healing workshop that I'm doing through the diocese. The Intercultural Development Inventory, or IDI, has been around for decades, and maybe some of you have taken it through your work. It assesses intercultural competence and places you on a continuum from denial to adaptation. And it also highlights the difference between your perceived orientation, or how adept I think I am at navigating intercultural differences, and my developmental orientation, or how I actually perform in the world. And not surprisingly, or it shouldn't have been a surprise, but it was still humbling, I learned that I overestimate my ability to effectively and graciously navigate intercultural differences, and that I tend to operate at a much lower level of competence than I believe that I do, certainly lower than I would like to. In other words, although I have done an awful lot of tomb work, every time I emerge into the bright light of day, I am still bound and often tripped up by my white, male, cisgendered, heteronormative, able-bodied, educated, relatively financially secure position in the world. And none of those bindings are things that I can fully remove by myself. I need partners, I need fellow pilgrims to speak truthfully and compassionately to me, to unbind me as I stumble from the dark into the light. We all need that. We all need to do both the inner work, and we need to have some fellow pilgrims we can rely on to tell us the truth about ourselves. Now, I am very fortunate because I do have those fellow pilgrims. And my prayer is that All Saints can be a place where many, if not all, can find space both to do that inner work and also find fellow pilgrims who can help with the unbinding. I pray that this tomb work and this unbinding work can be not just some special program that we do once in a while, but can become the fabric of our common life, can become simply how we are with one another, supporting one another as we stumble from the darkness. Brittany Denninger, the poet that I mentioned earlier, sums this up nicely. She says, quote, "I am reminded that we must be gracious with one another as we recognize the fact that we are all in various stages of coming out of our tombs. The process of coming alive is mysterious and holy work. In the unbinding of Lazarus, I am reminded that we need one another. alongside of us as we undergo the vulnerable process of being unwrapped, of seeing in a new way, of learning to use our hands and our feet again. Transformation is lifelong work, she says. And as we move towards Easter, may we respect the journey of the other. May we reach for our neighbor and do the work of unbinding. May we look for signs of life within us and move from our tombs. And may we partner with one another in the process of becoming more fully alive. May it be so. May it be so. Amen.